Talk about a fun concept. We're going to talk NCAA tournament, and I'm going to get to do it with three really cool volleyball people. Former Mississippi State coach Jenny Hazelwood, who has become an announcer this year, mostly for the SEC Network and ESPN. Former Auburn and Minnesota coach Laura Bush, who is a little bit colder than all the rest of us. She's in Minneapolis, and she also did some television this year, most recently the MEAC Championships. And Coach Bill Ferguson, the former USC men's coach, who was sitting in his backyard in Los Angeles, reminding us that it might get up to 72 there today, or down to 72, who knows. So start with you, Bill. Couple of interesting local teams for you, USC and UCLA, one of the cities with two teams. And I have said all along, I love the USC team, but I worry about defense when it really matters. And UCLA is one of those teams that I don't think anybody wants to play. How's that for a start?
Yeah, you and I talked about UCLA in our last chat. I think it's a couple weeks ago, and we talked about them just kind of quietly drafting SC throughout the whole Pac-12 season, and heck, they've got a fantastic, ended up with a fantastic record. That is actually to me, that's the pod that it has the most, I think, potential for craziness. If you look at everything there, my gosh, there's a whole lot going on there. You got Michigan, Santa Clara, all these teams that Florida, and Texas is gonna possibly square off with Purdue. They're like that to me was the pod that had the most going on. So, and I think UCLA fits perfectly in that group as this team that like we talked about, quietly going about their business, and they may end up playing Texas in a couple weeks, in another week, and that could be a really interesting matchup. So I'm looking forward to see. That's, like I said, that's the pod that I think has the most potential for craziness. And I think on the flip side, I think SC's pod probably, and how many times are people going to say this over the next 2 weeks, or start sentences with the precursor of on paper? On paper, that looks to probably be, maybe the most straightforward pod of the four. SC, when they've gotten into big matches, their freshman outside hitter Ford has had some trouble in their final match of the season against UCLA, in their match a few weeks ago against Washington, and she's gonna have to be able to step up on the big stage.
Well, Bill, one of my biggest fears whenever I do these chats, and I do them, one or two a day, it seems like, is my dog's barking. So you not only have the garbage truck going, but also the dog barking. So let's go to Jackson, Mississippi, where Jenny Hazelwood is. And, of course, Jackson State goes up to Minnesota, where Laura is, but we're not going to talk about that match. Two teams that are intriguing in there. Texas A&M, nobody expected to win the league. And I just don't know what to make out of them in this tournament. And then the other team is Florida, and if Florida hits on all cylinders with the talent that it has, Florida can win the national championship. That's your dog barking. You're going to have to mute that microphone there, Bill, so Jenny can jump in there.
Yeah, those are the ones next door. Love them.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to see Texas A&M a number of times this season. And can you hear me, Bill?
Yeah, we hear you great. We hear Bill's neighbor's dogs, too.
Just making sure. And, they're a team that gets it done, honestly, just by making things work regardless of the situation. They've had so much adversity this season, and it's like now whatever is thrown their way, they can respond to it. So it's been pretty impressive. When they were down 0-2 to Florida and they came out of the locker room, you could feel the difference on the court. So they're going to have some of that home court advantage, obviously, with hosting, but they also have a pretty tough road. I mean, they've got Hawaii, coming to their place. So, I think that's always a tough draw. Hawaii's a great team, a great ball control team that I think can slow down some of their powerful attackers. So, they live and die by their middle attack, but their outside in McGee has been great, but they're a little bit, at times they struggle in the other outside hitter position. So Texas A&M is going to have to find, some kills from their other outside hitter position, I think, to get past a team like Hawaii. And, it's going to be fun to watch, and I'm excited to see how far Texas A&M can go because, they really have a special setter. She was the player of the year in the conference, and she just makes it all work even when things aren't ideal. So they're a fun team to watch.
Just like Texas A&M was not picked to win the league and did, Minnesota was the same way in the Big Ten, and then is fantastic. And you could argue Minnesota's the best team in the country right now and playing the best. Laura, is Minnesota the team to beat?
I think Minnesota obviously is a really good team, but they've also proven that they're a good team because they've gone through the league with the Big Ten. And I even at the top a little bit, that we're able to catch some teams that aren't as maybe veteran as they used to be, like a Penn State with that experience. But then you're seeing Nebraska come on as well. Minnesota's had a great run, and I expect that they're going to continue that through their next 6 matches.
One more team I want to talk about because I don't think either one's going to win the national championship, but I think they're the best and the hottest teams, and I know that's totally illogical to say it that way. But Bill, is Washington.
Yeah.
Washington's fan on paper, I would say Washington and Minnesota would play each other, but it just never works out that way. But take it.
Yeah, you blanked out a little bit on me there, sound-wise, but yeah, I think Washington probably has less question marks, a lot like Minnesota. It seems like both teams are solid, but maybe the antithesis of SC where they have to rely so much on one kid with Bricio. I know Washington, you've heard Keegan Cook in interviews all throughout the year talk about how balanced they are, and that's their strength. And I haven't seen as much of Minnesota, but it certainly seems like they're kind of the same. In the little bit that I've seen, they seem like they're the same deal where it's pretty spread out. There's not a real weakness that you can attack or someone that really carries them. And if they have a down match, then it's trouble for them. So I think the analogy of those two teams, I think they're very analogous.
Okay, I got a list that I made up of what I thought were pretty intriguing first-round matches because there's too much of a tendency to say, well, what we could see in the second round. Ohio, BYU. I've watched Ohio play. Ohio is really good. Missouri and Missouri State, I think, could be a really, really fun match. Missouri, very, very good, but there's something about Missouri that's just not right to me, and Missouri State's really hot. Loyola Marymount, Colorado State, which I think is two evenly matched teams, and I want to start there with Colorado State. It seems to be that every year Colorado State's really good, great RPI, great winning streak, plays in a league that's not up to par with the Power Five, and so you're looking at a team that if just never gets as far as you would think. Anybody want to take on Colorado State?
Yeah, that's the match I had first round that seemed to be the most interesting. Colorado State is, as you described, that team in a group of 5 conference, if you will, and Loyola seems to be that new Colorado State coming up that, coming from like a non-BCS conference. Great coach. Tom Hilbert's been at Colorado State for a while, doing great. Now you have Tom Black, who's kind of the young up-and-coming Wonder Boy coach, with the national team, and he's done a great job at Loyola. So I think this is really cool. It's who's going to be that next, perennial great team from a smaller conference.
Yeah, well, along those same lines, and Jenny and Laura, think about these and then jump in. So there's a handful of teams I want to see if they're like really for real. Michigan State plays Arkansas State. I mean, Arkansas State, super record, super RPI, all with American players. I was shocked to find out they didn't have any foreigners. Arizona, Western Kentucky. We had a story about Western Kentucky on the website today. Is Western Kentucky for real? SMU, Purdue. It's been so long for SMU, and then the league, they play in. I don't know. And then, I'm dying to see if those teams are for real and see if we see them in the round of 16.
I haven't had a chance to see Arkansas State play at all this year. I've obviously seen Michigan State play several times. And what I see from Michigan State is that they're battle-tested. And I can't speak for Arkansas State resume on how they're battle-tested, even though they've won a lot of matches. The Purdue match, I think Purdue's going to come out of that as a winner. And I think that's just because they've been in the tournament a lot. I think they're hungry. They've been playing well. They upset Minnesota, even though they dropped a 5-setter to Michigan State soon after that. And then what was the last one you mentioned?
Well, I had SMU, Purdue, Western Kentucky, and Arizona. That's a really, really intriguing.
I think Western Kentucky's going to come out of that one if I had to pick a winner. And it's not for the lack of what Arizona has. It's more to do with how Western Kentucky plays. I think they play tough. I think they play scrappy. I think there's going to be a different style of volleyball than potentially what Arizona has seen. And I think that can disrupt some rhythms to a team that's used to playing a certain brand of volleyball.
If I could chime in on Western Kentucky, I broadcast their Conference USA Championship match this year and did the same last year. And they opened their season at Wisconsin. The first match of the year, the night Wisconsin unveiled their Big Ten championship banner, and they beat Wisconsin on their floor earlier in the year. That was kind of one of the things we were going with on the broadcast. And that team, all they do is win, and they're used to it. And they do run a different style of offense. They're real fast to the pins, and they run like a two in the middle. And they've got a bunch of kids on that team who they've won 3 conference championships in their 4 years there. So, you know, I like what we were just talking about. But that team they know how to win. I wouldn't be surprised if they knock a couple teams off.
The other really intriguing, there's 2 super intriguing first-round matchups. I mean, obviously Oregon and Wisconsin, just because of the name value of Oregon. You got to like Wisconsin in that match. And then the other one, Arizona State and Florida State. First rounder, and Arizona State, what could have been if Macy Gardner hadn't gotten hurt. She was on her way to being the National Player of the Year. They were undefeated, and of course it's just not the same team. But still, that's 4 big names, Arizona State, Florida State, Oregon, Wisconsin, where 2 of them are gone in the first round. Jenny?
Yeah, I've seen Arizona State and Florida State play quite a bit this season, and I think it's going to come down to, with Florida State, you know, how does their freshman setter handle in those 3 rotations? They run a 6-2. How does she handle the pressure of the NCAA tournament, all that comes along with that, you know, that matchup? And, you know, I really think that Arizona State is going to be, they're excited to be there. They're really fired up that they got in, but they have their struggles at times siding out, getting kills, getting out of rotations, and teams can go on runs of points. So I really think that it's going to I think Florida State comes out on top, even though I love the coaches at Arizona State, and I'm a big fan of all that they've done, and you know, and heartbreaking losing such a great player. But I think if Florida State's freshman setter in those 3 rotations that she sets, if she does well, I think they'll come out on top.
All right, if you guys are up for it, if you want to either pick me a Final Four or who you think might win the national championship, and see if we can do it before my dogs or Bill's neighbor's dogs bark again. Laura, who you got?
I knew you were going to pick me. It's going to be USC. It's going to be Wisconsin. It's going to be Minnesota. And I know it's going to sound really Big Ten. I think it's going to be Nebraska on the other side of the bracket.
It'll be very, very red in Omaha if that's the case. Who do you like for a national champion, Laura?
I think the national championship will be between Minnesota and USC, and then it's anybody's game from there. I mean, that's just a different venue atmosphere to play in. You don't know what you're going to get from your team until they've actually been there. So that's a toss-up for me. Okay,
we'll let you go with that. Jenny?
I have USC, and then I actually have Washington overcoming Nebraska. That regional's in Lexington, so I'm going with more of a neutral site. So I say the all-around play of Washington kind of wins out there. And then I have Texas and Minnesota on the other side of the bracket. And I think it's going to be a USC-Minnesota final. And gosh, I mean, it's tough. USC is the only team that in every per set statistical category for the NCAA, they are in the top 50. None of these other teams are in the top 50. Most of them in digs. They're not ranked in the top 50 because a lot of these smaller teams dig a lot of balls. Well, USC digs a lot of balls. So, I don't know. Maybe if they play great defense and Mauricio's hot and their freshman outside has a decent match, then they pull it out. But Minnesota's playing so well. So I'm with Laura. It's a toss-up.
All right. Bill?
I'm going to go SC out of their pod. I think I don't know if I can pick a winner between Nebraska and Washington. Those teams, haven't they faced every year and had some crazy battle? It seems like, you know, and you know, you could have Cook versus Cook in that regional final. I think Texas is going to get through their half, and then you know, you look at the bottom pod, the bottom right pod seems to be the toughest. I mean, do you want to go with Russ Rose? Do you want to go with Shoji? Do you want to go with Hugh? Hambly is like the young schlub of the four, if you could even say that, and that's absolutely crazy talk. So you look at all those, you look at those four programs coming out of that, and that's yeah. No, you guys do that one.
Okay, well,
I think
Hambly being called the young schlub, I'm not exactly sure, but you know, hey,
isn't that crazy?
As a graduate of the finest university in the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Illinois, making its first NCAA appearance in a first-round matchup, Southern Illinois and Illinois. Now, I think Illinois will win, but I'm happy for those Salukis. So, Bill, who you got winning it all?
I think, I don't know if I have a complete winner. I think SC's in the final, and I think it's going to be between Minnesota and Penn State to come out of that, and whoever wins that's going to be playing SC in the final.
All right, well, as I wrote in a blog earlier this week, your national champion is going to either be from the Pac-12, from the Big Ten, or Florida, Texas, or Hawaii. But I've gone through the bracket. I'm terrible at it. I'm just going to tell you guys I'm taking Stanford to win the national championship. That's my pick.
Ooh, what a contrarian.
I know, but, you know, hey, why not? Well,
weren't they in the game last year, right?
They were knocking on the door. One thing you know about Stanford is going to be real exciting when it gets past that round of 16. Jenny Hazelwood in Jackson, thanks so much. You're awesome. Laura Bush in Minneapolis, stay warm. Bill, you're just making us all sick sitting out there. We definitely had some. When you guys watch this, you'll go, oh, a couple times it looks like one of those Japanese movies without the right voices in the mouths. But what we ended up doing was great, and I really appreciate everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.